All characters in the story are over the age of 18. The sweltering summer evening enveloped the house with the sweet, heady scent of jasmine, penetrating every crevice, every pore of my skin. The music coming from downstairs vibrated not only through the floor, but seemed to resonate with the beating of my heart. I sat at my desk on the second floor, trying unsuccessfully to force myself to concentrate on my history textbook. 18 is the age when you're an adult, but you're still bound by the ties of school life. Thoughts of the upcoming exams didn't want to settle in my head, displaced by the laughter of the women coming from downstairs. My mother's laughter, tinkling with a slight hoarseness, stood out from the chorus like a solo part in a complex piece of music. Her friends were visiting today, a bachelorette party, as she called it with a smile, and I tried to stay out of their sight, letting them enjoy each other's company. However, with each passing minute, the sounds coming from the living room became more and more intriguing. The clinking of glasses, intermingled with fragments of phrases and bursts of laughter, piqued my curiosity. Outside the window, dusk was fading, and an incomprehensible excitement was building inside me. I threw the textbook on the table. It fell with a thud, as if to emphasize my impatience. A particularly loud burst of laughter came from downstairs, followed by the clinking of glasses, like an invitation to join the party. Curiosity finally got the best of me. I opened the door quietly and started down the stairs, treading carefully, as if afraid to disturb the mystery below. There was a dim, warm light coming from the living room, and the scent of expensive perfume mixed with the smell of wine and fruit. I stopped on the last step, hidden by the shadows, and peered inside. My heart beat faster. My mother, Elena, was sitting on the couch in a light champagne-colored silk dress that exposed her long, tanned legs. Around her, like bright tropical birds, were her friends: Svetlana with fiery red hair, Natalia, a slender blonde, and Irina, a brunette with piercing, dark eyes. All four of them were slightly drunk, their cheeks flushed, their eyes shining like stars in the night sky. They were talking excitedly, gesticulating and occasionally bursting into infectious laughter that echoed in my chest. And then he said to me, "Elena, you're driving me crazy," Mom told me, rolling her eyes theatrically, her voice sounding unusually flirtatious. "Can you believe it?" My friends laughed, and their laughter was like music to my ears. "Of course we can," Svetlana replied, fixing her lush red hair, and her gaze slid to me, who was in the shadows. "With such a figure." She smiled slyly, and that smile made me blush. "Andre, hello, why are you hiding? Come to us." Her voice was soft and inviting. Mom turned around. Something incomprehensible flashed on her face, a mixture of surprise, slight irritation, and barely perceptible embarrassment. She looked away quickly. "Andre, what are you doing here?" she asked, but there was none of her usual sternness in her voice. "I just heard the laughter and decided to watch," I mumbled, feeling my cheeks flush. "Well, since you're here, come join us," Natalia said, nodding to the empty seat next to me. Her blue eyes looked at me with undisguised interest. I entered the living room tentatively, as if I were crossing an invisible boundary. The atmosphere was electrified, filled with some special energy. The women's gazes burned as if they were touching. I sank down on the edge of the sofa, trying not to look at my mother. The wine, the perfume, the laughter. It all made my head spin, creating a sense of unreality. "Andre is all grown up now," Irina murmured, her dark eyes glittering like two coals. "He's already peeking at the bachelorette parties." Her words caused a new explosion of laughter. I felt awkward, but at the same time I was strangely excited. It was the first time I'd seen my mom and her friends in such a relaxed, candid state. They seemed to me not just familiar women, but some mythical beings, radiating sexual energy that spread in waves across the room. My father had left us 2 years ago, leaving behind a gaping void and a deafening silence. He said he needed freedom, new experiences, a new breath of air. He left easily, as if throwing off old clothes, without looking back, without saying goodbye. Mom felt his departure hard, as if she had lost a part of herself. She had always been a strong, independent woman, with her head held high, but that was the first time I saw her broken, confused, like a lost child. I was 16, an awkward and conflicted age, and I tried to support her as best I could, even though I felt lost and scared myself. We talked a lot, sharing our pain and misunderstandings, sometimes just sitting next to each other on the couch, and there were more words in that silence than in any conversation. At some point, I felt that our relationship had changed, moved to a new level. We were closer, like two lonely trees pressed against each other in a storm, but this closeness had taken on a new, unfamiliar color that both attracted and frightened me. My mother began to pay more attention to her appearance, as if trying to fill the inner emptiness with external glitter. She had been a beautiful woman before, with hair as dark as the night sky and eyes the color of sea waves, but now her beauty had taken on new, brighter colors. She wore more revealing clothes that emphasized her slender figure, bright makeup that made her even more attractive. Her hair was always perfectly styled. Every morning she spent more time in front of the mirror than before. Sometimes I felt as if she did it on purpose for me, as if she wanted to get my attention, to make me react in some way. Her touches became longer, lingering on my skin, her gaze more penetrating, as if she were trying to see into my soul. I didn't know how to react to these changes. On the one hand, I loved my mom and wanted to support her, to protect her from pain and loneliness. On the other hand, I was confused by this new intimacy, this implicit sexuality that emanated from her like the scent of a forbidden flower. I was a young boy, full of bubbling hormones, and sometimes I caught myself looking at my mother not as a mother, but as a woman with her seductive forms and languid gaze. These thoughts frightened me, made me feel guilty, and I tried to chase them away, to drive them deep into my subconscious, but they came back again and again, like pesky flies. My mother's friends only intensified this strange, electrified tension. Svetlana, Natalia, and Irina were bright, self-confident women who knew their worth and were not shy about their sexuality. They often came to visit us, and their visits always turned into raucous parties with wine, music, and frank conversations that I tried not to overhear. They flirted with me, gave me ambiguous compliments, insinuating that I was no longer a boy. Their touches were deliberately light and slippery, as if casual, but I sensed a hidden meaning in them. I felt their interest in me, and it flattered my ego, fed my youthful ego, but at the same time it made me uneasy, a sense of danger, as if I were standing on the edge of a precipice. One day, when my mother was away, Svetlana came into my room. She was dressed in a short summer dress that barely covered her thighs. Her red hair was loose over her shoulders like a fiery waterfall. She sat on the edge of my bed, and she smelled of perfume and wine. She began to talk about her love affairs, about the men who had been at her feet, her voice low and husky, her eyes glittering like two jewels. She moved closer to me, her perfume intoxicating, her warm breath burning my neck. I froze, paralyzed by fear and desire, not knowing what to do. At that moment I was on the verge, ready to succumb to her charms, to plunge into the maelstrom of forbidden pleasure. But something stopped me. Perhaps fear before the unknown and the consequences, perhaps insecurity, or maybe, somewhere deep inside, I realized that it was wrong, that it was a betrayal to my mother. Svetlana smiled, as if reading my thoughts, and kissed my cheek lightly, leaving a lipstick mark on it. "You're still too young, Andrei," she said with a slight sadness in her voice, and left the room, leaving me alone with my confused feelings. This incident further complicated my relationship with my mother and her friends. I began to avoid their company, tried not to be alone with them, afraid to give in to temptation. I felt that I was getting into some dangerous, forbidden game, the rules of which I did not understand, and I was afraid to lose. I just wanted a normal life, calm and predictable, but it seemed that fate was preparing a different, much more complicated scenario for me. That evening, when I went down to the living room, the atmosphere was heated, as if the air was vibrating with unspoken desires. The women looked at each other conspiratorially, their eyes glistening, their lips curving into sly smiles. My mother, sensing my excitement, which I tried in vain to hide, tried to diffuse the situation. "Andrei, you are quite pale," she said with feigned concern. Join us. Have some wine. Relax." She poured me a glass of ruby red wine and offered to join their conversation, but her attempts were futile. The air sparked with unspoken desire, a sexual tension that could almost be felt, and I could feel my body responding to that mute call, every cell of my being vibrating in unison with their energy. Svetlana, not hiding her interest, which was read in her every look, in every gesture, began to ask me about my plans for the future, about my dreams and desires. "Tell me, Andrei, what do you dream of becoming?" she asked, her voice soft and enveloping like velvet. "What are your hidden talents?" Her questions were too personal, too intimate. They crossed the invisible boundary I'd always felt between us, and I could feel myself blushing under her piercing gaze that seemed to undress me. Natalia, sitting next to me, placed her hand carelessly on my knee. "You're so tense, Andrei," she purred, her fingers lightly stroking my skin. "Relax, we're our own." Her touch was light, almost weightless, but tangible, like fire on ice, and I flinched as if electrocuted. Irina, who'd been watching us silently with an enigmatic smile on her face, smiled with the corner of her lips, her dark eyes burning with a predatory glint. "He's shy of us," she said with feigned offense. "What kind of man are you, Andrei?" Mom, seeing that the situation was getting out of hand, that I was on the verge of a breakdown, suggested a game of cards. "Let's play something better," she said, trying to turn the conversation to another topic. "Who's in favor of poker?" But the game quickly turned into a farce. The women were constantly distracted, casting meaningful glances at me, making ambiguous suggestions to me, hinting that the evening was just beginning, their laughter growing more and more raucous, louder and louder. I felt like a hunted animal, surrounded by predators, ready to pounce on their prey at any moment. "Andrei, you're not playing at all," Svetlana said, her hand casually touching mine. "Thinking about something pleasant?" At some point, Svetlana, with a sparkle of mischief in her eyes, suggested a game of bottle. "Let's play bottle," she exclaimed, her voice ringing with fun. "It's so much fun." I tried to refuse, feeling it was a bad idea, but my mom, to my surprise, supported her idea. "Don't be afraid, Andrew," she said, her voice sounding strangely husky, as if she was excited about the idea herself. "It's only a game." The game began, and the bottle, like a compass hand drawn by some invisible force, pointed invariably toward me. The kisses, at first innocent and timid, like the touch of a butterfly, became more and more passionate and frank, their tongues entwined, their breathing quickened. I kissed Svetlana, her lips hot and moist. Natalia, her kiss was tender and sweet. Irina, her kiss was passionate and demanding, and each kiss ignited a fire of desire in me that threatened to get out of control. "You're a good kisser, Andrei," Natalia whispered in my ear, her voice trembling. When the bottle once again stopped on me, and all eyes were on my mom, she took my hand and led me into her bedroom. "It's time for you to become a man, Andrei," she whispered in my ear, her voice trembling with excitement. That night, I crossed the line separating boy from man, a line I had previously been afraid to cross. Mom and her friends became my mentors in the world of love and passion. They opened the doors to a world I had only guessed at before. They showed me what real pleasure is, what real intimacy is. They taught me the language of the body, the language of love. That night changed my life forever. It became a point of no return. It was semi-dark in my mother's bedroom, cut through by the rays of moonlight coming through the gaps in the curtains. The scent of her perfume, familiar yet intoxicatingly new, hung in the air like an invisible web. Mom closed the door and turned to me, her eyes glittering in the semi-darkness. "Don't be afraid, Andrei," she whispered, her voice low and husky. "I won't hurt you." She took off her silk dress, and for the first time I saw her nakedness, which the clothes had previously concealed. Her body, graceful and perfect, seemed to me a work of art, made for love and worship. Confusion and fear fought within me with an excitement I could no longer contain. My mother approached me and began to undress me slowly, her touch gentle and caressing, as if she was afraid to frighten me away. When I was left naked, she pulled me against her, and I felt the warmth of her body, the softness of her breasts. "You're so beautiful, Andre," she whispered in my ear, her breath burning my neck. "I've waited so long for this." Our lips met in a long, passionate kiss. I could taste the wine and her lipstick, feel the beat of her heart echoing in my chest. Mom led me, guided me. She was an experienced and skillful lover, and I gladly surrendered to her caresses. That night I experienced all the joys of physical intimacy. Mom opened to me a world of pleasures that I had only dreamed of before. We loved each other tenderly and passionately, like two lost travelers who found each other in the vast desert. Our bodies intertwined, our souls merged in ecstasy. After the passion subsided, we lay in each other's arms, and I felt happy and peaceful. Mom stroked my hair, and her touch was full of tenderness and love. "I love you, Andre," she whispered. "I've always loved you." I hugged her tighter, and in that moment I realized that my feelings for her had changed too. I no longer saw her only as a mother. I saw her as a woman I desired and loved. There was a knock at the door. "Elena, may I come in?" came Svetlana's voice. Mom smiled and nodded at me. "Come, open up," she said. "This is your house now, too." I opened the door, and Svetlana, Natalia, and Irina entered the bedroom. They were naked, their eyes burning with desire. I realized that this night was only the beginning, that many more discoveries and challenges awaited me, and I was ready for them. A few weeks passed. Life in the house became a continuous feast of sensuality. The boundaries between us were completely erased. Mom, Svetlana, Natalia, Irina, all of them became for me at the same time my mistresses, friends, and mentors. I plunged headlong into this whirlwind of passion, savoring every moment, every touch, every kiss. But gradually the euphoria began to evaporate. I began to be tormented by doubts, guilt, fear of the future. I realized that what was happening between us could not last forever. Sooner or later it had to end. One evening, after another night of lovemaking, I was sitting in the kitchen trying to gather my thoughts. My mom came in and sat down next to me. She saw that I was upset, and she put her arms around me, pulling me against her chest. "What's wrong with you, Andre?" she asked with concern in her voice. "I don't know what to do," I replied, struggling to hold back tears. "I'm confused. It's all wrong." Mom was silent for a while, as if choosing her words. Then she sighed and said, "I know, Andre. I'm confused too, but I don't regret what happened between us. You gave me a happiness I haven't felt in a long time." "But how do we get on with our lives?" I asked. "We can't go on like this." "I know," Mom replied. "We have to make a choice. Either we forget everything and go back to the way things were before, or we leave here, start over, together." At that moment, Svetlana, Natalia, and Irina entered the kitchen. They heard our conversation and realized that the moment of truth had arrived. "We want to be with you too, Andre," Svetlana said. "We love you." "And we're ready to leave with you," Natalia added. I looked at them, these 4 women who had changed my life, and realized that I loved them all. And it wasn't just passion, it was love, complicated, confusing, but real. "I love you too," I said, "and I'm ready to leave with you." It was a crazy, dangerous decision, but we were willing to risk everything for love. We knew there would be hardships, challenges ahead of us, but we were sure that together we could overcome anything. We had made our choice, and now we had to live with the consequences of that choice. We left the city, leaving behind a broken marriage, youthful dreams of a normal life, and whispers of gossip. We found a secluded place among the hills where we began to build our own world, a world based on love, trust, and mutual respect. It was not easy. We faced misunderstanding, judgment, even outright hostility from those around us. But we held on to each other, keeping the fire of our unusual love burning. I learned to take responsibility not only for myself, but also for the women who became my family. Elena, my mother, became closer to me than ever. I saw her not only as a lover, but as a wise, strong woman who taught me a lot. Svetlana, Natalia, and Irina became for me not just partners in love, but true friends with whom I could share joys and sorrows. Our story is not about sin or debauchery, but about love that knows no boundaries or conventions, about the choice that each of us made consciously, taking responsibility for our feelings, about overcoming social taboos and finding our own happiness, about the fate that brought us together and gave us a chance for a new, unusual life. What do you think of our choice? Do you think our love is abnormal? Share your thoughts in the comments.